Welcome to the board meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District Board of Directors. It's February 22nd, 2021. And with that, would you please call the roll, Cindy?
Director Budge. Director Harris.
Here.
Director Howell. Director Hume. Director Jennings.
Here.
Director Kennedy.
Here.
Director Natoli.
Here.
Director Chenier.
Here.
Thank you, Director Howell. Director Chenier.
Here.
Director Cerna.
Here.
Director Valenzuela.
She just indicated in her chat she's having technical difficulties.
Okay, I do see her, however. Oh, looks like she got off and may come back on. Chair Miller.
Here.
Let me go back. Director Budge. Director Howell. And Director Valenzuela doesn't look like she's back on. However, we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody would unmute their microphones and join me. Is the flag up, Cindy?
Yes, sir, it is. Can everybody see it?
Yep.
Yes.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be streamed live on SacRT's website and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air on February 28th at 2:00 p.m. and March 3rd at 9:00 a.m. on Channel 14 and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed captioned. Thank you. And with that, I see that Director Valenzuela is back.
I'm sorry about that. Had some audio challenges.
No problem. Director Budge is on with us as well. And I have not seen Director Howell yet. Chair Miller.
Okay, well, with that, let's move on to the next item, please.
The next item is the consent calendar, items 2.1 through 2.4, and I have two public comments on item 2.3. Would you like me to read those now?
Please, let's go to the comments and then I'll take a motion.
Okay. The first one is from Barbara Stanton with Ridership for the Masses. She says, hello, Chair Miller and directors. Ridership for the Masses concurs with staff to allow SacRT to offer free rides on paratransit, light rail, and bus for riders who have scheduled COVID-19 vaccine appointments. We commend SacRT for being a good neighbor and community partner. The next comment is from Mike Birnbaum. The more people that can get vaccinated, the better off the population will be as a whole, getting towards the goal of herd immunity. Having any barriers to getting a vaccine makes life harder on the person and people around them. One of those barriers to be eliminated is that of transportation options in going to and from a vaccine appointment. While the district financial loss is a bit concerning, the goal of this item nonetheless is to provide help to people. To that end, the information presented and how this will all play out makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Deborah, for presenting this last Wednesday via Zoom during the monthly meeting of the Sacramento Metro Advocates for Rail and Transit. This was a very educational presentation with a lot of knowledge gained from listening session last week. From that, and it being on tonight's board agenda, Chair Miller, I would be humbled and honored to help our entire population within the SAC-RT service boundaries, and would conclude my comments with a motion to approve item 2.3 staff recommendation before us. Sincerely, Mike Birnbaum. And that concludes the public comments on the consent calendar.
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
I'll second. You're muted, Steve.
On your mic. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, you're mute to yourself.
Thank you. We have a motion in a second. Would you please call the roll?
Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Howell, marked as being absent. Director Hume, Director Hume, I think you're muted. That would be a yes. Director Jennings,
Aye.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries at 91 votes. The next item, I'm sorry, Chair Miller.
Oh, please.
The next item. The next item is public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda. And I have one written public comment to read. And that is from Mike Birnbaum. The first of 5 Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority meetings was held virtually last Wednesday morning. Chair Don Saylor called the meeting to order shortly after 10 a.m. The meeting lasted just shy of 2 hours and is available for viewing on the Capital Corridor YouTube channel. Ridership during the pandemic has ranged between 5 and 15% of normal. Staff's overall goal in fiscal year 22 is to ramp up service back to the original 30 weekday trains and 22 weekend trains. The pending March 29th schedule change that is 99.8% sure of happening will only include 16 weekday trains and 10 weekend trains without a cafe car service. Health and safety, budget, and equipment availability will be the 3 critical factors that are taken into service recovery consideration. The board adopted an Amtrak operations budget as well as an Amtrak operating agreement that will go at least until September 30th. The legislative update was federally heavy, discussing the December 2020 COVID relief package, the American Rescue Plan, and the FAST Act reauthorization. The largest capital projects of South Bay Connect and Link 21 were discussed. The latter project is looking towards the mega regional economic benefits of a new Trans-Bay rail crossing. Chair Saylor said farewells to departing board members as well as to 2 particular CCJPA staff members that will be retiring before the next meeting. He also welcomed in new board members. The next meeting of the CCJPB will be at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, April 21st. And that concludes public comment. Chair Miller, you're muted yourself again.
Hey, but I got a cool background.
Yeah, you do.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Okay, there's no new business. Can we move to the next item, please?
Absolutely. The next item is the general manager's report, and I have one public comment on that item. Would you like me to read it now or later?
That would be fine. Thank you.
The public comment is from Mike Barnbaum. Mark and Julie, there were no presentation materials or PowerPoint presentations in the agenda packet. So my questions for both of you and what you present at tonight's meeting is along the lines of potential funding to the Sacramento Regional Transit District and how lenient or how stringent the money can be used. For example, can any of the legislative packages, state and or federal, that are being presented tonight be used for both operating and capital or only for one? If the potential funds are flexible, can the funds then be looked at to go towards service changes and or service improvements on bus and light rail, as well as zone expansions on Smart Ride, including but not limited to the creation of new zones that don't currently exist, and expanding both the span of service hours on weekdays and adding the service on weekends and holidays too. Sincerely, Mike Barnbaum. And that is the only public comment I have for that item.
Thank you, Cindy. Henry?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chair Miller, members of the board, and the public. To begin my remarks, I would like to first introduce SACRT's government affairs advocacy teams, both from the federal and state levels, to update us on what we can expect from the new legislative cycles. This is a tradition, once a year we invite our advocacy groups to update the board what is going to happen in this new year. SACRT is thankful for the highly effective advocacy in DC and here in Sacramento, as transit agencies across the nation navigate these uncertain and difficult times. We're also incredibly grateful for the federal relief funding we have received to date. Junior and Jeff, please introduce yourselves and go ahead to share more great news from federal perspectives with us. Now, after that, Mark, please share some insightful state news with us too. That being said, Junior, please take over.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening, Chair Miller and members of the board. My name is Julie Minerva, and I'm a partner at Carpy and Clay in Washington, D.C. I'm joined this evening by Jeff Booth of Booth Transit Consulting. So I will do a quick presentation, and then Jeff and I will both be available for questions. Let me first say, there's a lot going on in Washington, D.C., but we are so excited about the infrastructure opportunities for the Sacramento Regional Transit and the broader Sacramento region. We are just 1 month into the new Biden administration, and while Congress is focused right now on a rescue package to provide additional emergency COVID relief, we are also transitioning to a recovery package, which really focuses on infrastructure investments. Central to this recovery package will be the reauthorization of the FAST Act, which is something that SACRT has strongly supported over the years. This new FAST Act package we expect to be a full 5 years. And you may recall that last summer, Congress passed the first iteration of a FAST Act reauthorization as part of HR 2, the Moving Forward Act. While that piece of legislation did not move through the Senate or make its way to the president's desk, it will be the piece of legislation that the Congress uses to move forward with infrastructure in this Congress. There is strong support for transit programs within the Moving Forward Act, including the capital investment grant programs, bus and bus facilities programs, and all of the formulas that are supported. But what's more, this is a very forward-looking piece of legislation that I think really speaks to the priorities that you as a board have laid out for the organization. So we are excited about that opportunity, and we expect that the Biden administration will roll out a very high-level look at this recovery package here in the early spring. So keep an eye out for something from Secretary Buttigieg at the Department of Transportation in April or May. I'd also like to highlight that in addition to the really great support that you have within your existing congressional delegation, we're excited that Senator Padilla has been sworn in and his staff is getting ramped up. He just brought on a new transportation staffer last Tuesday. This is a person who will be new to SAC-RT, but not new to the congressional delegation since he's previously worked for 2 members in California. So we're excited about that. And last, before I close here, I just want to say that we are seeing a lot of the hallmarks of the Biden administration already play out in grant opportunities. And the things that we are seeing that really align with what SAC-RT is already working on are equity, climate, job creation, and security. So we look forward to working with you as we advance an infrastructure package in Congress and, of course, assist you with these grant opportunities as they become available. So I'll conclude my remarks there. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions? And Cindy, you're going to have to help me here. I can't see everybody.
I don't see any hands raised, Chair Miller.
Well, I think, Julie, that was so comprehensive. We have no questions.
Well, Henry, did you want me to talk about the capital investment grant changes in the House bill?
Yes, please.
Julie mentioned that HR 2, the Moving Forward Act, is the starting point for the House authorization proposal, the President's infrastructure plan. And in that bill, it contains a lot of good news for Sacramento Regional Transit. Number one, it authorized funding for the program at roughly $5 billion plus per year, which would be almost more than a doubling of the current size of the program. Number two, it directs the cost share to be 80% for all projects. And if folks want to overmatch, that's at their option, as opposed to under the Trump administration, that was a direction that projects would have to overmatch in order to get funding. So this doesn't compel project sponsors to overmatch. It changes the small starts criteria to raise the thresholds from $300 to $400 million and the federal share from $100 to $320 million, consistent with the 80-20 match authorization in the bill. So that increases the amount of federal funding that would be available for a small start project like the project working its way through the region. In addition, Congress changes the project development phase to make it a 3-year period rather than a 2-year period. And in addition, directs the administration that they cannot compel someone to lock in their project cost until after they're done with project development and before you go into engineering. And that's important because under the Trump administration, they were requiring folks to lock in their project costs prior to completion of project development. And then you lived with that project cost, which then forced a lot of project sponsors to do that work prior to project development because of the 2-year window for project development. But if this bill passes, what it does is it goes back to defining project development as completion of the environmental work and selection of the project or adoption of the project into the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And then allows you to use the period between project development and engineering to go from 35% design to 65% design. And then all the money that's expended to do that work would all be eligible as match. Whereas right now, any work that's done prior to project development, before you're formally in project development, is at local expense. So those are some major changes in the program. And in addition, they don't implement the program in a project, but they do allow you for a project that connects to one project or is part of the same system. If you opt to fund something locally, that project can be counted as match for the project that goes through the capital investment grants program. So that's that's also a significant change in the program. So with that, I'll be free to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Jeff? If not, we can move on to the state report. Thank you very much, Mr. Booth. Sure. And Ms. Minerva, is that how you say it?
Minerva, you've got it. Thank you.
Is it my turn now?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. This is Mark Watts, and I do apologize at the outset because I have pretty frail Wi-Fi today, so it's better to hear me than to see me break up. So I'm going with no photo today, no video. I'm going to catch you up with what's been going on in the Capitol since the legislature returned for a brief moment in December and are more engaged now. Friday was the last day for bill introductions, so we're still sorting them out. There were first cuts made. We've shared with your staff, and now we'll see what the legislature has produced. The main focus between January and this period, as we were waiting for the deadline for bills, was the focus was on the governor's proposal for early and near-term action on budget requests for amending the current year budget. And those are nearing the final stages. Today, they had a budget committee hearing to go over a half a dozen or more bills that will provide assistance to Californians and to small businesses and start the reopening of schools on a more formalized basis. The committee structure in the Capitol has been focused a bit for the last couple of weeks on budget subcommittees as they start to take a look at the governor's budget proposal for the coming fiscal year. And in addition, we are now seeing bill hearings for policy committees being set. We learned today that the Senate has decided to waive the constitutional provision that required a bill to be in print for 30 days before it could be dealt with. So they're getting ready to start taking action. I would like to mention a few things dollar-wise in terms of the impact on the state budget on transportation programs. First, there's about a $20.6 billion overall budgetary program for the state revenues. They are projecting a modest diminishment of about $1.5 billion over the next 3 years in terms of gas tax revenues. But in the main, we are holding steady at the state levels. The core transit budget for California is seeing a continued increase, although it's a little bit less than what had been projected, of almost $700 million for state transit assistance programs. And that's good news for transit agencies because that money comes directly to you formulaically. And I think to see that amount coming through is, I think, a good surprise. We'll see how that holds when the actual dollar amounts rather than projections are provided at the May revision coming up. In addition, they're expecting nearly $500 million to be available for a competitive grant in the TIRCP program, which is largely funded by the Cap and Trade program. And finally, the low carbon transit program, which is similar to the SDA, is expected to come in at the projected levels. One of the better actions that have taken place within the budget is the proposal by the governor to provide TDA relief. So your local transportation funds that you receive at the county level that are shared with transit operators is seeing continuation of modifications to the efficiency standards that have been in place. And we'll see in his proposal that transit operators will be held harmless due to the ridership levels being diminished during this period. Financial penalties will be for noncompliance. These statutes will be eliminated for the time being. And finally, consistent with one of the requests from Mr. Birnbaum, there will be increased flexibility in the state transit assistance state of good repair program. It can be used going forward if the trailer bill is adopted it can be used by transit operators for operations as well as maintenance activities. Moving on several bills I want to bring to your attention. I won't go through a lot of them, but there's a couple of interesting ones. Assemblymember Aguirre Curry has reintroduced ACA 1, which is the threshold for voter approval for bonds and other tax revenues related to public infrastructure. Senator Allen has introduced SB 44, which is a measure that produces judicial streamlining for transit projects. So this will cut down the time if there are challenges. It's essentially the same kind of program that was put into place by then Senator Steinberg when he did the legislation related to the arena a while back. The last 3 or 4 bills I want to bring your attention to, and we're now digging into them. Brand new bill by Assemblymember McCarty, AB 1226, provides general fund appropriation in an unspecified amount for the capital corridor, for investments in the capital corridor. So we haven't got that happened on Friday, so we haven't got the opportunity to spend time digging into what his ultimate goal is with that legislation. Senator Wiener has introduced an extension of the road user charge pilot program authority. And that's important because as we go into the future with less and less internal combustion engines for sale, we need to find a replacement for the fuel tax as a source for funding, including the sales tax that is collected that provides transit assistance. The most controversial bill that's erupted is AB 786. It would change the appointment process for the CTC's executive director from an appointment by the board to an appointment by the governor with Senate concurrence. And we're waiting to see how that's going to turn out. So overall, I have one last thing I want to share with you, and that is in the latter part of 2019, the governor issued a executive order in 1919, and that executive order challenged or required or asked the Secretary of Transportation to put together, in essence, a climate action plan. They identified about $5 billion in the annual budget process that are under control of various state agencies, including Caltrans and CalSTA. And the governor's challenge to them is, can you please try to align some of these state resources with projects that are require less and less greenhouse gas or produce less and less greenhouse gas emissions. We're now a year and a half into the development. The Secretary's office is conducting outreach. We expect the CAPTI Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure to be unveiled next month, with a final product being available in July. The reason I mention this is there's going to be a very, very heavy shift in programs like the STIP, the portion that the state controls, into more and more transit, less and less streets and roads. So I think this is yet another way for this administration to stand side by side with transit operators and provide for more mobility alternatives going forward. And with that, I'll bring my presentation to a close and be happy to take questions.
Any questions for Mr. Watts? Well, thank you, Mark, for the presentation. It seems like this is a year to be in transit with the different administrations.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Hey, I just want to continue my, briefing. So again, first, thank you, Junior, Jeff, and Mark, for those precise and exciting updates and insights. And we're thankful to have your tremendous advocacy and the strong support of our federal, state, and local elected officials, and the congresswomen, congressmen, and our senators. They are, just extraordinary in terms of helping the region to secure more money. And this truly is a historical time in terms of massive federal and state funding to be available for transit industry to rescue and recover our economy. Sacramento has to seize this probably once a century time to advance our long-awaited capital projects, especially library extensions, north to Thomas or Airport, south to Elk Grove, or northeast to Central Heights and Roseville. With that, I also want to take a moment to highlight an item the board approved just a few minutes ago. Starting March 1st, in coordination with Sacramento County Public Health, SACRT will be providing free rides to and from COVID-19 vaccination appointments on all of our services. And we hope this will help the region get vaccinated so that together we can end the pandemic. But most importantly, we are eliminating barriers to access. And we have read some stories of seniors that have walked miles to receive a vaccine in a terrible winter storm in another state just last week. And this is not something we want to say in our region. We are very excited on this partnership and will be sure to report back after it launches. And speaking of the free fare programs, and we are also very excited to extend our ride-free RT K-12 program for a second year this past October. While the pandemic has disrupted our normal schooling, a study funded by Sutter Health and University of Texas regarding the program highlights some encouraging results. The report will be officially released very soon, but I do want to highlight some of the key findings. First, the ride-free RT program sponsored by Director Chenier from beginning increased ridership while significantly decreasing the share of students traveling to and from school by automobiles. Then second, the program increased access, including travel to important non-school destinations. We still say, based on our transit ambassador program, the feedback from our ambassadors, they saw about 50% of the school, the students' ridership. Still say 50% of students' ridership right now in this pandemic time, and the majority of those students, they travel to the non-school destinations. And the third finding is students report they're using public transit more to get to after-school and non-school activities because of this program. And the industry has recognized our success, and we routinely are taking meetings from our peers who are interested in replicating our program and the success. Anyway, we're the only transit agency who offered all free, fare free to all students from K to 12. So then continuing with the good news, we were recently informed that the California Department of Housing and Community Development has awarded SACRT a little more than $2 million as part of the transit-oriented development housing program. The program goals are to facilitate higher density, affordable, and mixed income housing development within 1/4 mile of transit stations. And the fund infrastructure improvements necessary for the development of housing or improving access to transit. And the SACRT received this funding to renovate the 13th Street and Arcades Plaza stations as we move forward with our light rail modernization program. In addition, the Capital Area Development Agency, CADA, received funding to build a mixed-use housing project with no on-site parking in close vicinity of our 13th Street light rail station. So we're so happy, the TODs are very, popular right now in this region. You just read an article about the smart, the TOD development. They want to rebuild our light rail station. Besides that, I just want to provide a very brief update on SACRT and the City of Elk Grove collaboration on the annexation, transit annexation effort. As part of the budget amendment the board approved tonight, we have set aside funds to cover transitional costs related to the potential annexation of Elk Grove transit service. Allowing this change in the budget will provide staff the ability and the direction to begin working on administrative procurement type processes, such as IT preparation related to the implementation. But no funds will be spent unless an agreement is reached. And SACRT has been the operator, the transit operator, under contract of Elk Grove's E-Train and E-Van service since July 2019, and demonstrates quality service in our operations with high levels of customer satisfaction. And great thanks to Director Pat Hume and also Director Alternate Stephanie Nguyen. We have had many great meetings with city staff and now we're working with city staff on just a couple the remaining outstanding items on an annexation agreement, and plan to do a larger workshop with the board in March regarding the terms. As we know, by uniting through annexation, we can better serve the Sacramento community with added benefits such as regional fare program, transfer-free regional ADA paratransit service, so our ADA customers do not have to transfer at the board of the City of Elk Grove. Increased competitiveness for federal and state grants, and the economies of scale, and more. So finally, to conclude my comments, I want to share some great news from SACRT's financial health. Last March, S&P Standard & Poor's Global Ratings issued a negative outlook for all public transportation agencies because of the pandemic. And S&P just completed the review on SACRT annual performance as of January 2021, and they improved our outlook from the negative outlook to stable outlook. We are among the first group of transit agencies to do that, to be able to do that, to get that upgrade. I mean, they continue to say we're doing better than most transit agencies. And this is truly a great news and reflective of the great work being done by SACRT staff and the strong fiscal and governance policies adopted by our board. Let me just allow me to read one point of exact comment from S&P. There are many comments. I just want to read one. Very strong management and governance with an experienced management team with fiscally conservative policies and a considerable expertise and a record of success in routinely meeting or exceeding its fiscal targets, mitigating risk, and successfully managing the system. That is one of the many reasons they changed our outlook to stable. With that positive note, that concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you have anything, board and the chair, if you have anything, any questions.
Thank you for the great report, Henry. It's always good to hear good news. Anybody have any questions for Henry? And hearing none, I did notice that, go ahead, Cindy.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I raised my hand. I wasn't sure if that was the right protocol.
I'm on my cell
Didn't
phone.
mean
I'm
to
having
interrupt.
trouble seeing anything, including my mute button.
It's okay.
Go
My
ahead,
tech is not
Director
happy with
Valenzuela.
me today either. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to applaud Henry. So we pulled off something a couple weeks ago that I wasn't sure many board members knew about, and I wanted to brag a little bit about RT because I called Henry at 8 in the morning on a Friday because we were having trouble at the Galleria. Too many folks were showing up for that warming center, and as you know from our recent COVID scare, we wanted to limit entry, and so we were leaving 20 folks outside every night. So I called Henry at 8 in the morning and said, hey, can we get a bus down here when we do intake so that we can take the people down? And I'm telling you, by 8 p.m. that night, there was a bus parked at the Galleria ready to take folks to the overflow sites. And I just really want to commend Henry and his team and Chris and everybody for getting that done so quickly. We had a good 10 folks take advantage of that on average every night to go to a different site. And it wouldn't have been possible without RT's quick work on that. So thank you. And I hope that's the beginning of many more partnerships as we do this work together. Thanks, Henry, for that.
Thank you, Director Valenzuela, and I'm sorry. Actually, I want to say this is a great teamwork between city staff and RT. And imagine in that day, because we have to have a contract, we have to get the both, city attorney's office and RT attorney, legal counsel to agree on that and sign on that, risk management. There's so many things going on that one day. That is just amazing in terms of getting that done. It's a great teamwork. I just want to say this.
Yes, thank you. Great story. Thank you for sharing. I did notice there's a written report of the San Joaquin JPA meeting in the agenda. Director Hume, do you have anything to add? With that, we will receive and file the written report on the JPA meeting. And in the agenda is also our SAC-RT meeting calendar. And again, Henry, thank you for a very upbeat general manager report. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Brooks, if you'd call the next item, please.
It looked like Director Hume may have wanted to provide a comment.
Patrick, you there?
I'm trying to be there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we
Now
can
we
hear
can.
you.
There we go. All right. Unlike the chair, I'm having audio problems, but my video is working perfectly. I just wanted to report, it's in the notes for the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting, but my colleagues down there voted to select me as chair for the next 2 terms. And so I will be heading up that organization. And as the director pointed out to me in discussing the working group meeting, I check a lot of boxes because not only am I from Sacramento region on the RT board, I'm on the station committee. And so I look forward to representing RT and our region and hopefully getting some stations built as we look at expanding the service and really working with the high-speed rail group to make rail travel throughout the state a much more efficient reality. So thank you.
All right. Congratulations on your appointment, Pat. Now I think we're ready for the next item.
The next item is reports, ideas, and questions from directors, if any.
Anybody have anything? Hearing none, we can move on to the next item, please.
The next item would be the announcement of closed session items, and I will read them for you. Item 13.1, conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, existing litigation. 2 cases: A, Robert and Loretta Bell versus SAC-RT. B, Susan Say versus SAC-RT. Additionally, there's item 13.2, conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D anticipated litigation, and we have 2 cases.
Now, I will not be reporting out any action tonight, I do not believe. Is that correct?
That's
I guess
my
so.
understanding, Chair Miller.
I guess it's always possible, but in light of that, we will not reconvene in open session and adjourn after closed session.
So at this time, Chair Miller, you're adjourning this meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we'll ask everybody to please exit the meeting except for those that will be staying only for closed session. And we'll give you guys a few minutes to do